Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, October 21st, and we are joined by our all-star panel of top local journalists, Gwyn Lurie, editor-in-chief of the Montecito Journal, Jade Martinez-Pogue, news editor at KEYT, and international man of mystery, Santa Barbara's Joe Rogan, Josh Molina. Thank you all for being with us. Okay, Monday, October 24th is the deadline to register to vote in the November 8th election. So don't miss that. Don't forget to vote. Let's talk about some last minute election stuff. Gwyn, all of your endorsements are now out. And I think, to me, the most interesting kind of hyper local thing you got going is the Cold Spring School Board. We did a panel with that, but there's just this ongoing controversy in the community about the school and how it's being managed. So how did you decide on those?
Well, as you know, we interviewed 3 of the 4 candidates. There are 3 seats open. And, I think it's a very hard thing to know what's going on in that school. I know people who just feel very committed to the leadership there and the program there. And I know some parents who feel like there's shady stuff that's gone on. We had the conversation, Jerry. I don't know what you thought. I thought they were all kind of very well spoken and seemed to have their hearts in the right places and endorsed the 2 incumbents, Michael Marino, who is currently the chair of the board, and Jennifer Miller, and then parent and attorney Elke Kane. We didn't get a chance to talk to Erica Kellis, which
sum up what the allegation of alleged shady stuff is?
I think that I think it's all steeped in what people would probably say is long-term fiscal irresponsibility. That the
welcome to my life. Yeah.
that funds haven't been managed properly, that the chief legal counsel, and who's also the financial executive in the district, that there's a conflict of interest on his part in the job. And so there's a lot of criticism about that, that they obviously had a bond on the last.
Yeah, I was going to say, so as a practical matter, what it means is that there's a lot of opposition as bond, which based on our conversation, they really need, just as a capital improvement thing.
Right. And obviously there are a lot of people in the community that have not supported that. Look, when we spoke with these candidates, I think they all admitted that they hadn't done a good enough job of communicating with the community. And, having gone through this at MUS, I know on, firsthand sort of how important it is to bring the neighbors into these conversations. So yeah.
All right, Josh, and then you did a piece on the one of the contested seats for the Goleta City Council, and the key issue there seems to be their view on the proposed sales tax hike.
Yeah, so incumbent James Carriaco is facing a challenge from newcomer Sam Ramirez, and they are very different. This is one of those contests where you can actually have clear choices in terms of who you want to vote for. There's a proposed 1% sales tax increase on the ballot, and the city wants to use it to increase funding for infrastructure improvements, and streets programs, and roads, and just public services, parks. And James Carriaco is for it, and Sam Ramirez is against it. And it kind of all goes back to this, correct me here, Jerry, or you can interrupt me if I get too boring here, but revenue neutrality agreement. And Sam Ramirez says, hey, when Goleta became its own city, they cut this deal with the county that said, okay, if we incorporate, we'll give you some of our tax money because you depend on that. And that agreement is still in place. And so Goleta is losing about $8 to $9 million every year that they give to the county. And Sam says, why should we ask people about increasing a sales tax when we aren't even doing everything we can to get that money back from the county? The only real way to do that is litigation, and Goleta has not opted for that route yet. And Sam says he would. Now,
But doesn't the county provide services still to Goleta? Or
yeah,
not?
there are separate agreements though for public safety that the county does as well. But as a political matter, it's a really interesting race because James is tightly locked into the Democratic Party. He is fully ingrained, and he is somebody who has played the game, and he will continue to play the game. And he's going up against Sam Ramirez, who's represented by Wade Cooper, who we know very well. And he is somebody who is he's also a Democrat, but he's not a establishment Democrat. He sort of feels as though he picks the candidates based off of who they are, what they stand for, and not just reflexively because they're Dems. So we have these two Dems who are battling, and Sam is Latino. Okay, he's Latino in a district that is majority minority district. And he says, hey, I look like the district. I want to represent this district. Whereas James is the political guy, and he has a ton of relationships. This guy's raised like $56,000.
Well, and that's the other
ads.
thing. He's put an ad, to help pay Jade's salary. He's got a TV ad for what, a slice of Goleta. It's a district of a couple thousand people. So the speculation is he's just trying to get his name out there more because he wants to run for the board of supervisors. I don't know. What do you?
Yeah, Joan Hartman's seat is going to be up in a couple of years, and there's been that rumor floated, and maybe it's been floated by the Ramirez campaign alone, but people are talking about that. And so, yeah, why do you need $56,000 to run in Goleta? It's not a whole lot. What is it, like 3,000 or something registered voters in that district? So there's that. There's that battle.
Yeah, $1,880 per voter.
And what's really interesting is James picked Sam to be his planning commissioner, and then a year later, Sam's like, "Hey, I'm going to run for the seat. Nothing personal." So there's a little bit of bad blood here going on between the two. James is the established Democrat, so he's got the party walking. If you go down Old Town Goleta, I was there this morning. There's James Carriaco signs everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's, for some people, part of the problem is that the Democrats sort of keep their cycle going. I don't know if Sam's the right guy to take out James. Sam's only got about $5,000-$6,000. And we've talked about, hey, if you're going to knock off an incumbent, an established Democrat, you've got to raise a lot of money and play hard. And so we'll see how it goes.
Jerry, before you move on from elections, I do think that in terms of the interviews that we conducted, I think really the most important races are the other races, because the cultural wars that we're seeing all across the country are now really being played out on the school board races or in the school board races, and especially in District 1 that was, named the first minority majority district ever in Santa Barbara. And so you have a really interesting race going on there. And then you saw, I think, Corey Heyman's endorsements that she did in the Independent for really the opposite slate.
Well, yeah, it's a kind of a semi-slate, I guess, of more conservative.
Well, it's all around COVID practices and
vaccines
and sex education. In the schools, these
critical
are the
race theory. All right, Jade, I believe, if I read my Twitter feed correctly, you were the first to report the verdicts in the Kristen Smart case up in SLO, which I just sort of scratched my head about. That one of them the dad got off, and the other one was convicted of murder in this long-running case. Were you surprised by that?
Yeah, it was really interesting because how the case was set up is, Paul Flores was accused of murder and his dad, Ruben Flores, was charged after the fact as an accessory to the crime. And the two cases were tried simultaneously. So Paul and Ruben had their own attorneys, but the prosecution had one, and there were two separate juries they were separated for deliberation. So the juries couldn't talk to each other, which is why I think we got this split decision. But it was really interesting because I had to make sure that we could get the news up fast, I had a couple stories pre-written with all the different scenarios of the verdicts. And I had one for both of them guilty, both of them not guilty. And then I had one for Ruben, the dad, guilty, and Paul innocent. And I did not have one for the way that.
So I
it
guess it was a
actually
surprise.
turned out.
Wow.
Yeah, so from my understanding, a lot of the evidence that would be used to convict Ruben was, they allegedly hid Kristen's body under his house, and he
This
helped.
is, of course, the college student who disappeared mysteriously in 1996. So it's a quarter of a century that her family, I think, has been waiting for some kind of
26
closure
years,
on it.
yeah.
Jade, you
Yeah.
thought there was a world in which the father could have been an accessory and Ruben not convicted?
I didn't think so, but I was like, whoa, that would be pretty weird, wouldn't it?
Well, the allegation was that he helped hide the body
And that, yeah, he helped hide the body and then later get rid of it. But the prosecution, like, they didn't find any DNA in the soil samples they presented. So I think that's why the jury for Ruben ended up finding him not guilty. And the San Luis Obispo Tribune actually did a nice piece. They were able to speak to one of Ruben's jurors under anonymity. And he just said that he really thought there wasn't enough evidence to prosecute either of them. And so it would have been interesting, like, if the juries were flipped, if Ruben's jury was assigned to Paul.
was it a 9-person jury or a 12-person jury? Do you know?
I want to say 9, but don't quote me on that. I don't know.
All right, mum's the word then. We won't. All right, and we should say that this experience with this trial and all these legal things is going to serve you well as you depart Santa Barbara. You're killing us all here. Heading for New York and new vistas. And today's your last day at the station?
Yeah, today's my last day at KYT, and I'll be starting my new job on Monday. So no time off. I'm going to be a legal reporter for a news organization called Law 360. Very excited.
Yeah, well, we're excited for you. We're going to miss you though. So, but meanwhile, if there's good cases back there, Jade, you can always, we'll beam you in. We've got this great technology. Hap Freund manages that really well.
May have exclusivity with them.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've really loved having you on the show and having your reporting first at Newshawk and now at KYT. And you will be missed. All right. Let me ask, where are we? Did we talk about this State Street thing last time, Josh? It's been 2 weeks about the parklets and how the Planning Commission and the Historic Landmarks Commission got together and had a big brawl over parklets.
It was actually last Friday. It was not 2 weeks, but I think
Okay.
I don't think we did a show last week. I don't recall, but
No, I had Baerback on to talk about the midterms.
big collision between the Historic Landmarks Commission and the Santa Barbara Planning Commission talking about the State Street Master Plan. And what was interesting was they brought the consultant, the $780,000 consultant, in the room in the Faulkner Gallery to listen to the two commissions talk as well as take public comment. And so it was a fantastic 3-hour meeting. If you love government and watching them talk about these issues, it was really intriguing and compelling. But to boil it down, we sort of have these two factions that are developing, which are, hey, we need to return State Street to some sense of how it used to be before COVID-19, because State Street in its current form favors restaurants, and they say it's a little bit shabby outside. And in terms of the outdoor dining, there's public safety issues, potential flooding issues. And let's fix this before let's fix it now while we figure out what the master plan is going to be. And then there's another faction that says, no, it's great. Have you been down there? There's so much vibrancy. Let's figure out how to make this better. We realize there's issues, but why would we turn back the clock? And Devin Wardlow, who is a planning commissioner, relatively new planning commissioner, just laid it out. She said, we're not going to go back in time. Retail is dying. We're not going to plan for retail again. And we're not unique in this world. Amazon has changed everything. So let's take what we have and let's figure out a way to improve it. Now, opposite of that is Ed Lenvik and Cass Ensberg, an architect, who are saying, look, great, you can go downtown and you can have so much fun, but my mother's in a wheelchair and not all of us are fully able to navigate that area where you have bikes and people and skateboards and outdoor dining, and it's not comfortable for some people.
And the mayor, I believe the mayor is on that side of things, is he not?
Yes, he is on that side. Jay Higgins is on that side. It isn't one, or two. It's
a really complicated, difficult one, because it's really going to cost restaurants millions and millions of dollars.
Well, I mean, you got it on Montecito, on Coast Village Road.
It's been hugely divisive between the restaurants and retail. And I don't know, Josh, has there been any study done to show that retail has actually gone down since before? Well, it's hard to know because it's all during COVID, so it's hard to know what you're comparing it to. But I know on Coast, I mean, I can't.
No, it's just all those empty storefronts kind of speak to it. I don't know. I mean, that's
and they were there before the pandemic.
Right.
We were writing those stories.
It was a ghost town there before, and even Coast Village Road. It's not like you had tons of traffic of people walking up and down, going in and out of shops. I mean, I'm curious to know, are they not doing as well? And there's also a lot of parking down.
That's a good question.
Coast Village Road. So
if we had a newspaper, maybe we could find out about that. Jade, you agree with me, however, I believe that the most important development here is that the city has decided to get rid of the green paint in the bike lanes that was the legacy of Rob Dayton, the former transportation. You guys did a piece on that, no? Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that email and I honestly kind of laughed a little bit, because I did a piece when they were putting in the green stripes, and I talked to Cass Ensberg and some other local architects. They were really against the green stripes, didn't want them there. And, the city's reasoning, there's all the bikes that go up and down State Street and the wheelies and, many room for accidents. But they sent in what I think a 4-sentence press release that they were getting rid of the green stripes because they weren't working. They weren't doing what they were intended to do. And I don't know, it kind of seems like a waste of money.
Well, Nick's,
They were there for a year?
Exactly. Nick's not here, so we don't have the bicycle advocate on board. But, Rob Dayton's whole thing was, I mean, he wanted everybody to get on a bike, regardless of whether you were able to walk or not. I mean, so that was something that I ranted about for a long time. So I'm going to just say Newsmakers gets results and take full credit for getting rid of the green stripes. Jade, I know you got to go. You got a office party waiting for you there. So we won't even see you on election night, huh? You're gone.
Yeah, no, won't be there on election. I might come watch the forum on Sunday night, just sit there and watch you guys. So we'll see.
But don't you have to be at work on Monday? I thought you said you have to be at work on Monday.
Remote.
Yeah, my new job is remote.
Oh.
So they have an office in New York, but it's remote based. So I'll be here for one more week.
All right. Well, listen, good luck. Thank you for all you've done for the show and for the community, and keep in touch with us. And you're going to have a blast in New York. I just know it. It's a perfect thing. Take care.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Well, that's sad. I feel sad. All right. Let me switch gears here a second. Gwyn, in the new issue, you have a rather lengthy letter from attorney Jana Zimmer about this disputed pot retail outlet that the Board of Supervisors is trying to jam into Santa Claus Lane. What's how much dispute are you hearing about that?
You know, I honestly just think the people in Carp are exhausted from this whole thing. I think they're, you know, I think whatever is actually going on, whether or not there's a lack of transparency or a proper process or, you know, enough consideration of what the people in Carpinteria feel about this issue, whether it's growing or a dispensary, I definitely think that the county has an optics issue, has a, you know, has a PR problem, because no matter what, there's definitely a sense that, you know, I mean, what was it that Doss said in 2021 that there was, I don't even understand this number, but that there was a 98.5% chance
he would be against
the project. Like that's,
right.
I don't know how you do that math in your.
And now he's, you know, now he's defaming her clients.
Well, he's saying they're lying and, you know, all of that. But he did repeatedly say he would not support it in that area unless there was a clear public benefit. And I'm not exactly sure what the clear public benefit is, but, you know, I think they also think that all of the other possible locations like Montecito or, you know, other areas, Toro, whatever, were just kind of summarily
dismissed. They were. And
because they knew what kind of objections they would be up against. So, you know.
Yeah, Josh, if you haven't read the piece, I'll give you a hint. The headline is "The Fish Rots from the Head." So that's kind of the view that she's taking. I mean, it's a very janky process about how that site was selected by Dennis Bozanich, who, miracle of miracles, Mr. Revolving Door turns up a couple of years later to lobby on behalf of it. So there's that. And then, of course, you know, the usual DOS business. But there are, I think, serious land use planning issues, starting with the fact they haven't done a traffic study. The counties refused to do it. And I think Jana's letter points out that it's, you know, the county is treating this like it's just a business license, but it's not. It's a change of use. It's more intensive. And I think those are the kinds of issues that are going to be brought in an attempt to appeal once, you know, once the county, Greg and Doss and Steve rubber stamp it again. I mean,
I think the meeting is November 1st, you know, before Greg
leaves, you know. And even Nick this week in his Poodle, and I highly recommend everybody read it, you know, talks about, you know, how they just collapsed, you know, on this whole odor control thing for an 8-acre thing, which is right next to Cade School, several residential areas. And, you know, and DOS is now saying, well, we don't have enough electrical supply there. And then Nick points out that the next thing they do after he brings up this issue that no one's ever heard of is approve getting rid of gas stoves, so everybody has to use electricity. So plenty of electricity for stoves, but none for odor control in Carpinteria. All right,
I just want to say too, I think Gwyn makes a really good point about the optics of it, because people, especially in government, they dig their heels in and they say, well, we're the smart ones, we're the policy ones, we've studied this, we know how this should work. And they often forget that top-down sort of I know best mentality is really offensive to people who have to live their lives daily experiencing those policies, and they forget that, and they think that what they're doing is personal, like they're personally defending their stance on this issue, when they should not do that. This is not a personal battle with these individuals. This is about setting public policy that works for the people who are there. So, I mean, that's a really good point, that these leaders need to take a step back and say, even if we think we're right, this is not working, and
Yeah,
we're going to
it's
have
like
to
that.
unwind this.
It's like that Maya Angelou quote, it's like people don't remember what you do or what you say, they remember how you made them feel. And I think these people just, by and large, feel completely unconsidered. And that's not good.
Yeah, and we have Laura Capps will be arriving in January to replace Greg, who's going to be on his way to Sacramento. So we'll see if there's any changes. I do know, and I'm working on a piece about this. There's a new state law that was just signed by Gavin Newsom, which is going to extend a lot of the campaign contribution transparency regulations to local government. And they're going to have to fess up if they have taken money from someone on whom they are making a decision on a permit. So DOS might be reading that list for quite a long time the next time there's a pot permit. All right, the other really interesting piece, Josh, you really need to read this in your magazine, one of your many magazines, the Media Impresario up here, the Riv, the new issue, written by your very own roommate about this Google, I don't know, is it a lab? Is it a workspace? Whatever, in Goleta, a very nondescript building from the outside, but extraordinary on the inside, where they are building what? The world's largest or first or both quantum computer, which does what exactly, Gwyn?
Well, it's a computer that will be, they say, 1 billion times faster than any existing computer. It's like the difference between a regular computer, what they call binary computer, which codes in ones and zeros, and the quantum computer, which has nearly infinite information between 1 and 0. So it's like the difference between a light switch and a light dimmer, if that makes any sense. But the result of that is something that would take 10,000 years to do with a computer will now take 10 minutes to figure out. So it really pushes us into what they call the post-encryption society.
Right. I think one of the things that Les Firestone in the piece makes clear is they could break the encryption code for Bitcoin in 10 minutes or something. It's really a fascinating story.
Like having a car that has 1 billion horsepower.
Yeah.
And so because of that, the issue becomes, how do you control it? How do you control a car with 1 billion horsepower? It can be used for good, but it's also, I believe from everything we understand, Google's kind of ahead in this race, but there are a lot of people not far behind, the Chinese, that, this is being pursued every which way. And there's no question it's gonna change the world. And really interesting for Santa Barbara that it does exist in Goleta in this kind of nondescript building. But also what's interesting is that, the internet was originally developed by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. And it's a division of the Department of Defense. And they wanted to have this 4-node system that would communicate. And back then, only places that had enough that could afford, because remember, computers were like the size of a room, right? So the only places that can afford to do this experiment, it turned out to be Stanford, UCLA, University of Utah, and UCSB.
Yeah,
so
really
UCSB,
interesting history that
was really, the internet was invented right here at UCSB. So that's pretty.
Well, mega kudos to Les for getting inside that thing. And the picture of Albert Einstein standing on the beach in Santa Barbara alone is worth the read. But
doing an amazing job with that magazine, I have to say. I know I'm biased, but I think you don't see writing like that a lot.
Oh, and the images as well are really spectacular. But tell me something, the tattoos on the forearm, now, are those aspirational or ironic? That
Well,
he's
it
sporting.
started out, the idea started out as kind of a little bit of a joke because he often and was for a long time stopped on the street with people mistaking him for Anthony Bourdain. And so there was a very famous pose that Anthony Bourdain did with all of his tats on his arms. And so Les did the same pose with his, and just conceptually, what he envisioned for this magazine really was the way Anthony Bourdain went into the kitchen with food. He wanted to go behind the scenes of art and architecture and design. And it's really people defined by place as opposed to place defined by people, which is our other magazine. So it's, and most design magazines these days are really lifestyle magazines, and it's mostly visual porn, and you could really finish by the time you get to the checkout stand. And so he wanted to really tell the fascinating stories behind all this stuff.
Yeah, and we had Les on the show not too long ago this year, so we do have that interview as well. Speaking of meta journalism, Josh, who have you got on the podcast this week?
Well, I have Cass Ensberg, who is an architect, and she's the one who really pushed back on this idea that we can only be planning for millennials for downtown and able-bodied individuals. So we talked about that and a whole bunch of Santa Barbara issues related to housing and architecture. These architects, they're really brilliant people. They're great for conversation, and the way they see things is so fun to have those kind of conversations with. So, and enlightening the way that they're artists. She's also a fine artist too. So we talk about Santa Barbara issues and break down the meeting at State Street as well.
And Gwyn, it is alleged that you are constructing a special podcast studio on the
Premises of the Montecito Journal.
On Verona of the Montecito Journal. How do you respond?
I take the fifth.
All right.
We are doing that. We are doing that.
All right. So when are we going to hear the?
And by the way, it will be available for others to use too, Josh and Jerry.
Oh,
so
good
we're not selfish in our, but we want to, there's a lot to talk about with the RIV, with the Giving List Women, with a lot of the things that we're doing, and local stuff too. And to date, we've been so busy with creating a digital presence and our magazines and the Giving List that we haven't really had time to focus on this. So we're going to do it. I think we're going to have a green screen in there so we could change the background and the sets for different people's use. And
all right.
Yeah, exciting.
We have new headquarters, Jerry.
What's that?
We have new headquarters.
I
right
know.
there.
I know. Very cool. All
Where
right.
Headquarters.
Say again.
Where are your headquarters, Josh?
You're looking
Our
at
headquarters have been TVSB, and now they're my kitchen and wherever Jerry's
okay.
at.
I like
we have
that.
we have new headquarters once we partner with you. That's what I mean.
I see. Got it.
And I will say, Gwyn is a collaborative journalist, unlike others I could name. I name no
Let's
names.
name them.
You name them. I'm going to protect my other alliances.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for Josh Molina and Gwyn Lurie for being with us. Farewell to Jade Martinez-Pogue, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.